right, so let's say you're starting from complete scratch, you know nothing at all, and you're considering the self-study route. I would suggest you get one of the books of 10 LSAT exams 52 through 61. That's starting with September 07 to like October 2011, I think. And so those are fairly recent, so they're relevant. They are the modern format. They have the comparative reading, but they're not so new that you might want to save them for full-length time practice later. So you still have, in that case, 62 to 86 to do as full-length exams if you want to. I'm not saying you have to do all that if your timeline's shorter. Maybe build your foundation instead with exams 62 through 71. The idea is that you want to have at least 10 timed exams for test day, but you also don't want to prep with ancient stuff that's a little bit different in feeling. A lot of people love to do a timed practice diagnostic test cold. I personally don't like that approach because I find it very discouraging. I said myself, I got 152s and wasn't in love with that idea, but it's normal to not score where you want to be at first because you haven't learned anything yet. The LSAT, I think, is like a foreign language. It's a totally different way of thinking. It's so formulaic and technical. The people who write it are philosophy PhDs, as you can see from their text. And so it's normal to not do well at first, but you can improve. My study plans are oriented around, did you have a question?
No, I'm just
okay, sure. So faking me out. So if you have a study, let's say you're starting from scratch, you have a 3-month timeline, whatever it is, I'd say build the foundation first. Get the fundamentals. There's some great prep books out there. You can search Amazon for textbook-like materials. But ultimately, you want to start building your foundation in each section, games, reasoning, reading comp. And then once you've built the foundation in a particular section, then you start introducing timing. I recommend untimed first to actually deepen your understanding and make sure that you have time to engage with the problems. And then once you've done that, then you can introduce timing a bit and work on your pacing. Like I talked about order of difficulty, order of approach in logical reasoning. The same could be true to some extent in the other sections, which I can get into if you like, but it's foundation, the basics, then pacing with individual timed sections, and finally with full-length timed exams. That's my overall arc that I use for all my study plans. And this comes back to why I think maybe the diagnostic is useful as a tool if you wanted to simply see, okay, well, I wasn't that good before, now I'm really good. Like, that's great. But I think overall, most people need to learn the same things, especially for logic games, where those will seem more foreign than anything else to most people, and chances are you'll do no worse than randomly guessing with no better than randomly guessing the first time you do a game section. And so I think everyone has to learn the same symbolic language and diagramming style to some extent. And there are a variety of methods. You'll find what works for you, and that's where the outside resources come in, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel. I think most people who have a humanities background, the reading comp may come more naturally, although LSAT reading comp is very different from SAT reading comp, so your approach will have to be different. But I think to some extent, except for the 1.9% of geniuses or whatever it is, like everyone's got to learn the same fundamental curriculum. Nobody's been doing like resolve the paradox questions or parallel questions for their entire lives. This is new to everybody except for the reading comp. So I think overall, you're going to want to work through a set curriculum, follow some kind of study plan or course curriculum if you're going that route. But there is something to be said for going from A to Z rather than jumping around a lot. The GRE, I mean, part of why there could be a lot of applicants with it. It's just that it's widely used for both grad school and now business school. I have been asking some admissions people about this, and what I hear is typically that it could be a good way for STEM majors to get in, people with that background. But if that's not you, the LSAT is probably the best way to indicate that you are serious about law school and not doing it as like a passing thought. So I would just consider that, but it is correct that, yeah, once you have an LSAT score on record, it'll be on your LSAC record for 5 years. And so you want to think about how seriously you want to do that. If your GRE is like way above what you suspect the school's median is, then maybe you could be okay with GRE. But part of what causes all this ambiguity is that this is a new thing, and we don't know how US News' rankings are going to consider GRE scores, and that's what a lot of law school admission officers care about because they want to raise the school's reputation. Their jobs rest on that. And so everything they're about is how do we drive ourselves up in the rankings. If you have an LSAT score that's way above the median, then they're really going to want you. They might throw scholarship money at you or something like that. But the GRE, it's kind of unknown. I mean, obviously the best answer is just do really well on the LSAT, but That's what it's all about, right? The best way to evaluate whether you're going to get a score you want on test day is to look at what's the average of the most recent 3 to 5 exams you've taken within the past month, let's say. That is a good indication of where you stand. People rarely jump up 5 to 10 points from that average. You can typically expect to score around that average, or maybe slightly less due to test day nerves, or maybe slightly more if test day adrenaline gives you a boost. But you also want to make sure that these scores, you got them when you were practicing under realistic test day conditions with 5 sections strictly timed. So no bathroom break where the clock is stopped, or no eating snacks that you wouldn't be allowed. And I'd also recommend having, if you have caffeine, Red Bull, coffee, whatever it is, practice with that if that's what you're going to have on test day. Having that, your heart pumping on test day all of a sudden is going to be a big shock. So try to mimic test day as realistically as possible, then you'll know where you stand.